Hey, good morning, church. It's good to have you with us today. Hopefully, things are going well for you. Hopefully, you had a good weekend and you got to enjoy some family time and enjoy some outdoor, maybe some outdoor time. Hey, today we're back in the scriptures. We're going to be in the book of Joshua today. We wrapped up last week with the story of Joshua, and we're going to continue in the book of Joshua today. We'll get to that here in just a minute. Let me just remind you of a couple things. One is that we are back and ready to fire this weekend or this week with live classes and with Bible studies in person and all those kind of things that are going on. We're like super excited about that. We're looking forward to getting back together with the church family and in small groups and things of that nature. So all those things are kicking back off. If you have questions about what is happening, there's information on our app. If you have questions about what studies are going on, you can look those up. Or if you just want to call the church, we can help you with that. We would appreciate that. I do want to say really quickly that wanted to remind you that if you are available. One of the big things we need right now is we are in need of some nursery workers. We just need some more people to help with that and volunteer. And so if you're able to do that, and if you love kids, and if you are committed to families, about giving opportunity for families to be in Bible study and in worship together, I'm talking about the parents and things of that nature, we would love to have you join our team to help with our nursery. In this post-COVID time right now, we just need you. We need you to jump on board and help us. This is a ministry opportunity. It's not just, hey, we need a body to watch a kid. This is ministry. You're ministering to those kids. You're ministering to those families. And so I'm going to be sending an email out a little bit later on this morning, asking you to commit to that, asking you to give up an hour of your time once every other month. I mean, you're not talking about a lot of time. This is a much needed ministry, and so we need to jump in. The body of Christ needs you to be part of that. So please consider that. I also want to just ask you to be in prayer. We've got a team of people that's going to be leaving next weekend, the 26th, to head toward Louisiana. To help with hurricane relief, and we know right now there's another hurricane potentially that's going to be striking in that Louisiana area. Looks to be a little bit further east than where the last hurricane went, but nonetheless, that's stressful for those people. So be in prayer for the people in the Gulf states of Louisiana, Mississippi, North Florida, as that hurricane or that storm is traveling that direction. So today we're going to be back in the story of Israel, and this is a really interesting story. So last week we looked at the story of Joshua and how Joshua led the people of Israel out of the wilderness into the promised land, right? We looked at the story of how Moses passed, and when Moses passed, Joshua took over. God says, Joshua, stay on track, don't turn to the right or to the left. You make sure you're faithful to the commands I gave you, and if you do that, I'll be with you. And so God was with them. They've defeated army after army and nation after nation and city after city, and they walked across on dry ground the Jordan River when it was at flood stage, and then God gave them the city of Jericho and all those different things. And one of the stories that comes from that time period is about a woman by the name of Rahab. And I want to spend just a few moments talking about this story this morning. And there's so many things we can take from this, and I just don't want us to miss this. A couple different angles. And so I want to talk about two things this morning regarding the story of Rahab. One is, what does this mean for the church? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But also, what does this mean for your story as an individual? And so let me just give you a background in this. Joshua was leading the people of Israel into the promised land. God had promised them this section of land that was going to be beautiful and fertile, and it was going to be their home, and it was going to be the promised land. But there's all these armies ahead of them. There's always all these nations that had already inhabited the land, and so they had to go and take over this land. And so Joshua, as they're getting ready to go into the promised land, sends a couple of spies. Ironic, because Joshua originally, 40 years before that, was one of the spies that went into the land, and he already knew it was there. So he tells them, hey, you two spies go into the land, survey it, see what's going on, pay special attention to the city of Jericho because we've heard that it's a big city. They have a big army and they've got a fortified city. We need to make sure we scope that thing out. So Joshua sends these spies. The Bible tells us that the spies go into the city of Jericho under skies. They're trying to hide. And as they get there, word leaks out. Word leaks out that there are spies that have infiltrated the city of Jericho. And so the leaders and authorities begin to look for these spies. Somehow the spies, the two Jewish men, end up at a woman's house named Rahab. Now, Rahab was a prostitute. Rahab made her living by selling her body. That was a pretty common thing in ancient days for women, because if a woman did not have maybe a good family, or if a woman would have maybe her husband passed, you couldn't just go onto Indeed.com and get you a job, right? You couldn't just apply at Walmart and get a job. That was not something that was common for women in those days, and so the only thing they had was to sell themselves, and so that took place often. Horrible thing. And so here's Rahab, who has been selling herself to make money, to make ends meet, and she ends up recognizing who these spies are. She recognizes who they are and where they came from. Now, how they got to the house doesn't give us that. It doesn't allude that there's anything shady going on or there's anything inappropriate going on. But she gives them protection, and she hides them. The Bible says that she ran interference, that when people came knocking on our door, she said, yeah, the spies were here, but they've gone. She's lying. She's lying. They went on top of the roof, and she hid them, and she was protecting them. But here's where it really gets interesting. It gets interesting in what she says to these two spies. So I want to read for us today. This is Joshua chapter 2, and she says, starting in verse 9, she speaks to the spies, and she says, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. Now, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family because I've shown kindness to you. Here's this really interesting thing. A couple things that this speaks about, I think, to the church today, and I think the church should take notice of this. One is that our reputation precedes us. That's not just for the church, that's for individuals, but our reputation precedes us. You've probably heard that phrase before. Here is a nation, the nation of Israel, that has not even gotten to the land that they're promised yet their reputation precedes themselves, right? That the people in Jericho, the people in the promised land, they had heard about the Israelite nation coming. And so Rahab says, we heard about how God dried up the Red Sea for you to cross back when you left Egypt. We've heard about how you have come against other enemies and your God has given you complete victories. We have heard about all these miraculous things that the Lord has done. And so we are terrified of you. We are terrified of what you are going to do to us, because we recognize it is not in your own power that you're doing these things, but you have the power and the backing of God who is leading you in these victories, and we are scared to death. That was a reputation that the Israelite nation had going into the promised land. I just love that dynamic, that God leads us out. And when we trust God, he leads us to victories. I just wonder about our own life, like in our own life as believers and as a church family. I wonder, what is the reputation that our church has in the community? When people hear the name Lake Eustis Christian, or if you belong to another church, what is the reputation that your church has in the community? When people hear the name Lake Eustis, are they pleased with us? Are they appreciative of us? Do they recognize why we are doing the things we're doing? Do they recognize kind of our heart? Do they know that we're sold out to Jesus? Do they know that we're compassionate about our community? Or do they think we're a nuisance, or we're not helpful, or we're selfish? Or what is the reputation that we have as a church family? That's something that's important to us. And so we work hard. We want to work hard to make sure that we have a good reputation in our community, that we are people that are known as advocates for those who are hurting, that we stand for people who uh, have had it difficult in life, that we come to the aid of those people who are hurting. What kind of reputation do we have as believers? That's an important thing. And then the other thing that's interesting here is she asked the spies to protect her family. She says, I have shown you kindness, and I would love to have you show me kindness, because she says, because we know that you're going to win against Jericho. We know you're going to destroy our city. We know that. Would you show us favor in that? The spies go on to agree with her and say, because you have shown us kindness, because you have put your confidence in God, we will show kindness to you, and we will spare your life and the life of your family. And so they arranged this kind of signal that Rahab was supposed to hang a scarlet thread, a scarlet rope in her window, and they would make sure that they would not hurt that family when they came in, and God upheld His end of the bargain, and Rahab's family was spared in that. The interesting thing is, Rahab here, she recognized that her confidence needed to be in the Lord. That her confidence needed to be in a God who could save, a God who was powerful, a God who could give her the chance of a new life. This was her only opportunity to have a fresh start. This is her only opportunity to maybe make this her life right again. This was her only opportunity to wipe the slate clean and begin to move in the right direction. And it's interesting that in faith, she makes the statement. In faith, she makes the obedient step to help God's people in this thing. It was a step of obedience. It was a step of faith. Her confidence was in the Lord. And we see that in the book of Hebrews chapter 11, Hebrews chapter 11 is a book or a chapter in the Bible in the New Testament that lists all these different people that had great faith in the Old Testament. And it lists people like David and Moses and Abraham and Isaac and all these incredible people of faith. And in Hebrews chapter 11, it also mentions Rahab, a woman who had sold her body for sex, is listed there in the story of God. Not because of her past, right? But because of what God would use her for in the present. Here's the thing. You can't undo the past. You can't undo what we've done. I can't undo what I've done wrong in the past and the sins that I've committed. I can't undo those. But what I can do is, with hopeful expectation, trust that God has a better future for me. That He has set me up to do something better than I ever expected. That's what He did with Rahab. The great part about the story of Rahab is Rahab ends up being the great I think it's great grandma of King David. She becomes the mother of Boaz, who marries Ruth, and then from Ruth they have Obed, and then they have Jesse, and then Jesse is the father of David, King David. So that means that Rahab the prostitute, who had this checkered past, is now part of the lineage of King David. And more than that, if we read in Matthew's gospel, we see that lineage traced from Rahab all the way down to Jesus Christ, the Messiah. So here, God chooses to take a woman who sold herself and her body in the sex business, to become the great, I don't know how many greats, grandma of Jesus, the Messiah. So I'm here to tell you that I don't know where your story started at long ago. I don't know what's gone on in your past, but I do know that God is the one who wants to shape your future. He's the one who wants to take you from where you are right now and do something great and extraordinary with you. The Bible tells us that God has the ability to do more than all we ask or imagine. So what is it that God might be wanting to do in you and through you? Maybe your story would be like Rahab's, that you would be listed in the hall of faith, because in faith you had confidence in God to do something incredible. So let's be like Rahab, and trust that the Lord is going to do something magnificent. Let's pray. God, thank you for loving us the way you do. Thank you for the story of Rahab. Thank you for her faith, God, that even though she probably felt that she was not worthy, even though she felt like maybe she was not a good candidate to be used by you, God, you still used her. You used her to save a nation. You used her to allow entry into the promised land. You allowed her to be part of the story about which Jesus would be birthed through. And God, we just know that even though we have made poor choices in our past, we have chosen selfishness and sin over you in the past, God, you are concerned about our future. And so you will take our past and you will redeem our past and you'll make it new so that we can be used by you. So I pray that you would do that. Help us to have confidence in you like Rahab did, in complete faith. We love you, God, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Hey, we hope you have a great day. I encourage you to be a blessing to someone else. And if you're interested in helping our nursery, please, please, please don't hesitate to email the church office at lakeeustaschristian.com, or call us 352-589-2235, and we will hook you up in that ministry opportunity. All right, God bless. Have a good day. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.